would love for you to leave the public eye and go focus on what makes you fulfilled.
Okay. Hi, my name is Candace Owens. I am a podcaster, a mother, a wife, and also the author of the upcoming book. My first claim is that the sexual revolution has devalued women and made them infinitely less happy.
Okay, so I think that it does make women less happy when they hit 50. But I would say that women are infinitely more happy in their 20s when they get worshipped by men, invited to hang out with the highest level men on the planet, and just worshipped and invited to the best events. That's what I think. I think at 50 maybe, but at 20, I would say the women are probably more happy today because they get all the freedom and no responsibility. Yeah.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, I'm Samaya.
Samaya, nice to meet you. I'm Candace.
Nice to meet you too. So my question for you is, statistics show that 60% of women who are murdered by their intimate partners, murdered by someone that they're...
Yeah, that women pick. So women pick... Women love violent men. Like, what? We pick them, so I got no sympathy. Sorry, ladies.
in close relations with. That's according to the UN from 2023.
Yeah.
So how is it that, women are so valued, quote unquote, in the home, and yet that's the place where they're at the most danger?
Okay, so I'm not sure what that has to do with the sexual revolution.
Right, the sexual revolution.
The first claim.
The sexual revolution gave...
I'm happy to answer it. I'm just saying that, if you broaden that statistic, you are more likely in general just to be murdered by somebody you know. So, of course...
But men are much less likely to be murdered by, their
That's not
partners.
true.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm sure, because men are less likely to be murdered by women. Full stop. Yeah, exactly. So that statistic makes sense to me.
But women are more abusive than men. Women are more violent, far more violent. The only reason women don't kill men as much is because we don't have the strength to. Like, if we could kill a guy with our hands, can you imagine? Oh my God. God, thank you for not giving us that power. I would be dead. I really would.
I'm still not sure how this correlates to whether or not
the sexual revolution increased women's ability to leave the house, women's ability to control their own reproductive capabilities, women's ability to, control their own, capacity within the workforce in regards to their own sexual capacity. So it is the very fact that the sexual revolution happened that made our access to the workplace much more, or just the public sphere in general, much more easy. So without the sexual revolution, women would be much more confined to the place where they're at the most danger. Isn't that true?
So you think that, just so I'm trying to understand your argument here, you think that if we didn't have the sexual revolution, less women or more women would be murdered? Are you saying that women are
more women would be murdered, for sure.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I do. I actually agree with her. I think there's a lot of laws that protect women now and let us basically be super violent towards the men. And if they were, because the whole system is based on the Duluth model. So men are automatically seen as the aggressors because of that model. Now, basically, the law lets women beat the shit out of men and men can't fight back. So yeah, I do think a lot of women run their mouths, and if it weren't for the misandrous laws we have today, they would be murdered. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So I'm gonna say where I agree and where I don't agree.
I disagree with that. I still don't think it has anything to do with the claim that women are infinitely less happy because of the sexual revolution, which has devalued women.
I think you'd probably be less happy if you're being murdered.
Oh.
Anyone disagree?
Okay, yeah, I don't, okay. There is definitely a correlation between personal relationships and domestic violence. And just to be clear, if we're talking about just a monogamous relationships, the most violent relationships that are on the books are between lesbian partners. Yes, when people are intimate,
that's not a true
That is actually true.
No, the statistic you're talking about is people who have faced domestic violence. Lesbians, yes, are more likely to have faced domestic violence, but that's because they're...
This is why women can't argue. It's now we're just going with semantics.
They typically came from relationships with men in which they were mistreated.
Lesbian relationships are the most violent relationships that we have on the books.
But we can move on.
They can fact check that claim. The point being is that it's not exactly a stunning statistic to say that when people are in relationships, period, whether those relationships are homosexual, whether they're married,
you're saying that the sexual revolution.
Let me finish. I've let you try to explain how this is correlated to happiness, and I don't think it does. I actually think you're having a different debate right now. But yes, absolutely, it makes perfect sense that.
I think arguing about happiness is stupid. I probably, I've had a long career. I'm sure I've said stuff, but I just don't think it's a good use of time. Because happiness, like some days I just wake up and I'm kind of down. Another day, happiness is highly correlated to where women are in their cycles. If I had to rate women's happiness based on their life outcomes, okay, this is what I believe. Women married to alphas are on the top, or that got commitment from an alpha. Women that are childless, women that are married to betas. Unfortunately, through women's actions, we see that women do not want to be married to betas. They don't. It's kind of sad. It's not moral, but that's where you get when women, it's like they crash out at 40 and they're like, I just missed out on so much and whatever. And then it's because they realize their husband's not what they wanted, unfortunately.
You are more likely in general when you are in a relationship because people are driven by anger by people that they know, whether or not we're talking about boyfriend and girlfriend, girlfriend and girlfriend, a husband and a wife.
Yeah, exactly. Most women would rather be single than married to a beta. Correct. And women crash out at 30, 28, 35, whenever it hits them where they can't attract the attention of alphas. Some women can hold on to it a little bit longer. Some hold on to it a little bit less. Yeah, so.
Husband and a husband or a wife and a wife, yes, of course, the instances of domestic violence are going to take place when you're inside of a home. But the sexual revolution, encouraging women to give up their goods for free, which is what I'm speaking about, and encouraging men not to marry these women or to have long-term relationships, what I am saying.
Now, Candace, a funny thing happens when you're doing commentary. You see a lot of women that do egregious things. And I think the worst thing that you can do is think that you're special or different or whatever, just because you have a different belief system. I've learned, I used to think that women with conservative belief systems were very different. And I think that's why I go kind of hard against them now, because I see now that they're the same. Candace Owens, I have a hard time believing that she has a body count less than 5, let's say. And I really think you can't, how many bodies would you say a woman can have where you can still claim her to be pure or innocent? Personally, I would say 2, maybe 2, 3. Right? So, but you expect me to believe, because this is how I think, right? Did you really have a 100% relationship rate having sex? You could be a woman with very good intentions or bad intentions, right? So I have to believe that you never wanted to have casual sex. You always were going for relationships. Okay, fine. Now, let's say you were always going for relationships. You're telling me you had a 100% rate that you never got pumped and dumped or ghosted. How about 0? Look, I'm just being realistic. So the way I would calculate, I would ask when the girl started. Because I don't know, some girls start in middle school, right? Some girls start in high school. Some girls start in college. Some girls, it's delayed. And I do see that with Gen Z. They're starting later. But the girl will go for the best guy at high school, get pumped and dumped, and then take, let's say she has a 50% commitment rate, which I would say for women is decently good. Okay, 2 in high school, 2 in college, 2 in a major city, every major city you've lived in. So we're going to do 8 dudes, because I think she lived in New York. You're right. You'll never know the numbers, but I've been asking the question recently: how many got like, and it's probably higher, but I'm going to say I'm giving her every benefit of the doubt. 'Cause she got married at 30, 2 in high school, 2 in college, 2 in a major city, and I'll give her like a 5-year relationship before meeting her husband. Maybe, you know what I mean? But you have to understand, every relationships a girl's had, I have to think, so your commitment rate was 100%. Now, if she was really hot, I would believe that. But she's like a 5. I would put Candace as a 5. You know, like if she was an 8, I could maybe accept a 100% commitment rate. I know women that claim to have that, and they're really hot. So then you got to go. Now, after a woman slept with like 5 dudes, the chance that she doesn't like divorce or get fat or whatever is like 10, 20%. I don't remember. Okay, you're going to say 5. Look, even if she's a 6, we know women are going for the 8s. You're not really going to convince me that she went to all of these cities and did all this, like, I just don't believe it. And to me, the only women that can put their money where, like Riley Gaines, I would believe that she is, even though she's in the skimpy swimsuit and like she did like a swimsuit magazine, I would believe she's more pure than I would Candace. Okay. Even I would believe Riley Gaines is more pure than Brett Cooper, because Brett was in a sorority at a big college where Riley, like, she was, I think she met her Chad husband in college, and she's pretty cute. I would say she's like a 7, I would say. Anyways, so I'm just trying to be realistic, because she's going to signal purity. I saw clips of this, and you just can't signal purity to me. And I think sometimes people talk long enough, you kind of start to believe your own BS. So I gotta talk about this.
Is a direct contributor to their unhappiness, because women are giving up their goods for free, and women are now entering the workplace, and that does not actually make them.
Now, you said Brett doesn't give me hoe vibes. Well, she might not even be a crazy hoe, but you expect me to believe. Now, we have to remember, the bigger the college, the bigger the ability to be a hoe without ruining your reputation. If you move cities, there's a bigger ability to be a hoe without ruining your reputation. From what I understand, she was emancipated at like 15, 16. So now she lives alone at 15, 16. She goes to a college that's big. I'd have to double check. I believe it was a big school. You are not going to convince me she didn't get a couple bodies a year. Look, you might believe it, but we just got to be realistic, guys. You know, if maybe she had a boyfriend all of college, well, even if she had a boyfriend, do I believe that she's hot enough to have? Because remember, women are going for alphas. That's who women go for first. And if he's an alpha, that means he can and will do better if he can. And again, Brett's cute. I would put her a 6. I would put Brett as a 6, Riley Gaines as a 7, Candace Owens 5. That's what I would rate him. Now, obviously, if you guys are really into blondes, then Riley becomes an 8. If you're really into brunettes, And I can tell you, none of these women are really higher than a 7, because they would be in Playboy. They wouldn't be in conservative media. Mids go to conservative media. None of them are hot enough to garner attention as like a bottle girl. Like, you seen Myron's girlfriend? Like, I think she worked. I think she was like a waitress in Miami, but something like that. But she's beautiful enough to do it. Right? That's where the hot women go. You might say she's not a 5, but I do casting, I do entertainment. I understand that like the challenge is women are so fat that it does inflate everything, but that it just means like, imagine, it just means like a basketball league got worse. And so now you're dunking on everybody, but it doesn't mean you're better. Like, that's kind of how I equate it. Maybe she didn't hoe herself out. Well, but do you see what you guys, like, that's simping right there. Why do you guys, is your reaction to give the benefit of the doubt? She's an actress. You know, I don't have to give you the benefit of the doubt. I don't. Now, to be fair, Brett Cooper did put her money where her mouth is, and she married at like 22. But, what were you doing in college? You know, what were you doing in high school? You guys, I don't give the benefit of the doubt. Like some of you guys do.
Happy.
Okay, pause. Sorry, you've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
Hello.
Hi there.
How are you? I'm Candace.
Nice to meet you. Julian, my pronouns are they, them. It's very interesting to think of it when we just think about the gender binary. It's, you know, how do we...
Right. Now, someone said Brett's pregnant. Totally. But why, if you're pregnant, why is your focus not on your family? And now she's accepting a job at Fox News. Now, again, I believe these women, if they start putting their money where their mouth is and they start leaving the public eye. Well, how do I put this? I'll believe that they're what they say they are. But if they're not if they don't do that, they're just not what they say they are. I'm not saying, like, I always try to be clear. I'm not special. I'm not different. I'm a woman. But we got to be realistic here that so are they, right? Everyone is.
Place value on human beings in general. And so when we think about, you know, placing value, that comes from a place of power, right? So I think let's select like the Victorian era. You have this dominant group of people coming from white supremacy, deciding who gets to have a proper status in the world. And so that is already like taking human beings and devaluing them. And so what the sexual revolution did was to help people seek out empowerment, which increased value, no matter the gender. So when it comes to sexual revolution, let's look at one contribution is sex education. I'm actually an educator. I teach sociology and LGBTQ studies. And I have absolutely seen the positive outcome with the sexual revolution and sex education and seen people empower themselves. And with that comes safety when it comes to decreasing STIs, abuse, sexual assault. Again, people get to empower themselves of all genders. And I know earlier you mentioned about violence amongst lesbians and sapphic community, which I do identify within.
Who is?
All genders can be subjected to violence.
That was the point I was making. So I wasn't sure of how her claim was relating to what we were talking about, whether or not it makes people happy or unhappy. Relationships are obviously a ground where there can be violence.
I guess I could just wrap it up by saying, like, if we all have access to like sex education through the incredible work of feminists through the sex.
I actually do believe in sex education, but not through the schools. But I'm actually going to do a sex ed show one of these days.
Sexual revolution, we are able to gain access to information and gain skills to
Riley Gaines went to LSU. Okay, but she had a boyfriend throughout college, I think. I don't really care, but you guys get the point I'm making.
An equitable society, egalitarian within our relationships, whether it be platonic or romantic. I'm so grateful for those feminists who have fought for us so we can gain those spaces and create a healthier society.
Okay, are you a believer in the government doing everything that it can to make people happy?
So when it comes, as someone that teaches in the public sector, I understand the concern when it comes to what is a teacher, you know, what kind of information they're providing to the students. I do believe that we, as a teacher, I should be able to give that sort of information. Again, I teach college students. One of my claims is I believe that we should mandate sex education amongst college students. So yes.
I don't. Google it. Do you know what I mean? Like, why am I wasting my tax dollars to teach you how to have sex? There's porn on the internet. There's Google. There's friends and family. I just don't want to pay. I don't want to pay for that to be taught this by some weird person that wants to talk to teenagers and young adults about sex. I don't.
I do want the state, I would like the government to give us those resources so we can implement that curriculum.
Okay. Are you consider yourself a feminist, I'm assuming?
Queer feminist. There's variations, right?
What is a queer feminist as opposed to a feminist, just so I understand?
Well, so I heavily believe in queer theory. So, the gender binary that we understand, it comes from colonization. So someone who is mixed race, family from Mexico, we have the Muxés in Mexico, which is an indigenous tribe. They believed in gender fluidity. And then you have European colonizers coming who dismantle that. And now everything that we understand when it comes to gender is a Western lens. So from a queer...
So you don't even think women exist, I'm guessing.
I think everyone should be empowered to figure out their identity and explore the language that best describes themselves. So freedom, America, right? America, freedom. And I want to believe in that when it comes to identity. Right. Everyone should have the freedom to decide how they want to identify, as long as they're not causing harm. But that's where we get into the debate, what is harm?
So just, again, to be clear, to go back to this claim, we are debating female happiness. Mm-hmm. You are saying you do not identify as a female.
I identify with all gender expressions. So from masculinity to femininity. So
I'm just saying...
Yeah, why is she here? Okay.
Are you just saying that as a part of queer theory, you're debating whether or not women are happier after the sexual revolution? I'm just trying to understand, because it seems like you're debating queer theory as opposed to female.
I believe all genders benefit from the sexual revolution.
You've been voted out by the majority. Please return
Thank God.
to your seat.